Paul Ricoeur, and we have been trying to understand various aspects of the philosophy of Paul Ricoeur. And we have seen that how Paul Ricoeur is trying to enter into the concept of human person and various aspects of the human person. We saw Paul Ricoeur talking about the ethical principles, Paul Ricoeur on the political issues, Paul Ricoeur on certain aspects of metaphysics. So Paul Ricoeur is touching all aspects of human life and human existence. We have only seen we will certainly come back to Paul Ricoeur once we get into the question of the philosophy of interpretation or hermeneutics, and we will certainly come back to a little about Paul Ricoeur. In the last class, I was talking to you about the ethical and political questions of Paul Ricoeur, and as I said, they were not very difficult to understand. Paul Ricoeur does speak about the golden rule and the new commandment that we have seen. Last time I was talking to you about the gift of pardon. Paul Ricoeur is talking about forgiveness, pardon. And also, Paul Ricoeur, in the last class, I was making a mention about amnesty and pardon. Amnesty means a forgiveness given to a political prisoner, or sometimes, a political prisoner is given forgiveness, that is amnesty. Whereas Paul Ricoeur is not just, that's something good, something very nice. But Paul Ricoeur goes a little further and he says that we need to go further. Forgiveness is more than amnesty. So forgiveness we have to insist upon. And we see how Paul Ricoeur is very powerfully influenced by the Bible, by the teachings of Jesus. As I said, Paul Ricoeur was a very good Christian, although not Catholic, but he was a Protestant Christian and very much deeply convinced about the teachings of Jesus Christ in the Bible. And Paul Ricoeur certainly has, in many places, taken Bible and some of the examples of Bible for his philosophical questions. So Paul Ricoeur also said at the end that forgiveness, yes, but we need not forget, because forget may lead us to forget soon and commit the same mistakes. Whereas forgiveness, forget, we need to remember. There is a book written by Paul Ricoeur on memory. So that's a beautiful book. Memory is one of the most important things in our lives. See, for example, maybe someone of you can make a little study about the question of memory according to Paul Ricoeur. Any volunteers? The question of memory according to Paul Ricoeur. Any volunteers? A little about, okay, Libin, you have to do it nicely. Last time you did something, no? It was not bad, but not very clear. So you'll have to make it very clear. So, Libin, this one is going to do. Your name comes Libin man there, because you are using somebody else's phone, I think.
Yes,
okay. Where is that Shibin? Has he gone home?
No, he's in the bed.
Morning, Father.
Shibin is there, man. Oh, my goodness. Can't recognize you, man. You look like a big man now.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah. You look much bigger than what you are. Anyway.
Only mustache come, Father.
Yeah, man. You look like a frightening to see your mustache are like huge. This one, film star. Anyway, so
My God.
we will a little about the memory and forgetfulness. That's I think the title of the book written by Paul Ricoeur, Memory and Forgetfulness. So memory, as I said, is so important because finally our existence is in memory. Suppose we lose memory, then as good as we have nothing. We have seen people who have had Parkinson's disease and so on. People who have lost memory. Now, when memory is lost, it's like everything is lost. We have nothing. We are at a 0 point. People like who have amnesia. Amnesia means people who have lost their memory. So we see old people, Parkinson's disease. When their children come and see them, they don't recognize the children. And that's a very terribly sad part. They don't know who is coming to see them. They don't recognize. Well, children say, I am your daughter, mama, I am your son, mama. But she says, I don't know who you are. So you see what a tragedy it is. So our very existence There is in the memory. Suppose I lose memory, I lose everything. Everything is stored in my memory. Suppose I lose memory, then it almost looks like I have no existence at all. I think that's a very important point. You could make a little study, maybe half a page or one page. You could ask the assistance of Shibin also, since he has started appearing now. You can also, both of you can, this one, and somebody else can assist him. Like Gleason is jobless. You can assist him. And I don't know, Sugesh, you also can assist and help him out. So these are a few things about the philosophy of Paul Ricoeur. I give you some very few highlights alone. Paul Ricoeur is a very vast, powerful philosopher. As I said, he's gaining day by day more momentum. He's considered today as one of the most accepted and most widely read philosopher. He died very recently. So we will come back to Paul Ricoeur, as I said, in the question of hermeneutics. So far I was talking to you about phenomenology. So we have had several classes. I do know that it's only an introduction, and I do also know that phenomenology is not that easy as it was, for example, that of existentialism. Existential was a little simpler. But I suppose I have sent you the notes and I have also given you explanation. So phenomenology is a 20th century school of philosophy started by Edmund Husserl. And as the title goes, phenomenology is the logos of phenomena. Logos means science and study of phenomena. What is phenomena? Phenomena coming from the Greek word phenomena, that which appears. So it is a study of anything that appears. It's a study of a phenomena, anything. And I said appearances can be of different types: physical appearance, psychological appearance, social appearance, spiritual appearance. Appearances can be. So you study whatever. So, in other words, it is not just an intellectual study, Husserl would say, it's an experience of the phenomenon. So, it's not just a study. The word study here is not intellectual study sitting in the classroom and study. The word study here refers to the experience I have of the phenomenon. How do I experience that phenomenon? So it's an experience of the phenomenon. So, for example, if I say God, of course, I have had several definitions of God. I have read so many things about God. But the phenomenology would insist, what is that God to me? What is that God that what is that phenomena called God? Of course, I do know that there are several people, but can I put all these things which I have known so far into brackets? That was the methodology of Edmund Husserl. Everything that I know about a phenomenon, I put it into brackets. Then I try to approach the phenomena directly and try to know the phenomena at its core. So that's why phenomenology originally was a method given by Edmund Husserl. So we have seen the different aspects of the method given by phenomenology method. So it has got phenomenology which includes bracketing, which includes reduction of the I, self, reduction of the object, then variation, eidetic variation. These are the different methods, and the purpose, the aim was to reach the thing as it is, as Husserl would put it, to go back to the things as it is, or to experience the thing in its flesh and bones, meaning to say, experience the thing as it is, not experience thing as it is given by somebody. That is not my experience. Experience the thing as it is, to reach the reality as it is, to reach the truth as it is, to reach the thing in itself. Various expressions. So I suppose you are able to gather something from all these explanations or definitions that I am trying to tell you. So, having said this, Husserl, gave way to birth of several phenomenologies. So, thanks to Husserl, several people, several philosophers were born, phenomenologists. Of course, they did not follow Husserl. They criticized Husserl thoroughly on various grounds because Husserl, as I said while talking about Husserl, he becomes more and more idealistic towards as he was trying to elaborate his phenomenology. he becomes more and more idealistic. He moves away from realistic to idealistic position. And people find difficult to comprehend him, people find difficult to understand him. So Husserl becomes more and more a person who did not make much clarity on his very concepts, but people understood the desire that he had. People understood the methodology that he proposed. People appreciated the intention that he had to reach back or to go back to the things in themselves. As a result, people were fascinated. So, thanks to his inspiration, as I said, several philosophers came into, they were born. So, first of all, this was Husserl. Then it was Heidegger. Heidegger was the most trusted disciple and also successor of Husserl in the university. And Heidegger takes a phenomenon, a particular phenomenon, and that phenomenon is called as being. So we have spoken in detail how Heidegger's main concern was to know what being is, because the question of being is a forgotten question. So he wanted to know more about being. He wanted to know what being is about. He also saw that this question of being is forgotten. So as a result, his whole attention was on the being. So we have seen at length the concept of being, how Heidegger has understood. And in order to comprehend being, we'll have to know which being can understand being. And he speaks about Dasein being there, and he speaks about the different dimension of Dasein. Dasein is being in the world, Dasein is being in time, Dasein is being for death, Dasein is being in its limitations, varieties of aspects of being in the world. Then he also spoke about, Heidegger criticizes to a large extent the traditional ontology because it was not ontology, it was ontology. And he goes to this ontology is called as fundamental ontology because he goes to the foundations of the roots of it. That's why it's called as fundamental ontology. So, thus, Heidegger is paving the way for the understanding of being. And however, Heidegger was thoroughly criticized by Levinas, comes another figure in the school of phenomenology, whose main concern was not ontology, but his concern was the other. The other. So Levinas, being a Protestant, this Jewish philosopher, he was also very powerfully influenced by the Bible, particularly the Old Testament, and the question of the other. So ethics was the dominant concern of Levinas. So Levinas tries to see everything from the spectacle of the ethical responsibility. So he says ethics should be the first philosophy, not ontology. Formerly, it was considered as ontology as the first philosophy. But according to Levinas, it should be ethics, the first philosophy, because ethics is the need of the hour. Because today's world has not forgotten being. That is what Heidegger said. For Levinas, what the world has forgotten is forgotten the other and our relationship with the other. What sort of relationship? So he is, he analyzes in detail the concept of ethics, the relationship with the other, and how the other, the face of the other with the capital O, other, capital O, is almost like an infinite for it. So almost like superabounding, the surplus element in the other. So these are some of the important aspects that Levinas is talking about. So from Levinas, we moved on to Paul Ricoeur and how he is interested not just in the question of the other alone. Of course, he is interested in the question, but the question of the self. So myself, the subject, is so important because from the self, I am able to relate to the other. So how the self is constituted, how the subject is constituted. Self means the subject is constituted. So that is another, and we have seen in various ways how Paul Ricoeur analyzes his philosophy. Am I making things very clear to all of you?
Yes, Mark.
Am I making things clear to you?
Yes,
Yes,
Father.
Father.
Yes,
Yes,
Father.
Father.
Yes, Father.
So anybody who has any questions to ask or any clarity to be still spelled out or anything not very visibly clear, I do know that everything may not be fantastically clear. And anybody, so I have sent you the notes. I do know that the language in the notes. Anybody has started reading the notes?
Yes, Father.
Anybody has started
Yes,
reading the
Father.
notes? Yes.
Yes, Father.
Okay. Everybody
Yes,
says yes only. I don't know what that yes means, but
Taking notes also.
when you come back here, that yes will have to be, you will have to pay a heavy price for your yes.
That
Yes,
language
Father.
Yes.
is little difficult, Father.
Difficult.
Yeah, yeah, language is difficult. That's what I'm explaining here. That's what I'm trying to explain, and so that when you read that from the background of what I said, you should be able to get something. Of course, you have to spend time reading, not spend 3 minutes, not 3 minutes. And Robin, it's not 3 minutes.
Yes,
It is a
Father.
long time reading, long time reading. So not just 3 minutes, and then I will be busy with my mobile phone. Robin, am I clear?
Yes, Father.
I told you I want to speak to your mother. Just wanted to find out how you are doing your things at home. You are escaping from that. That I
No,
will have
Father.
not
He is
forgotten.
in COVID duty, Father.
Oh, COVID duty.
Yes, Father.
So she is quarantined.
No, she was in hospital now. 20 days duty.
Why she was sick?
No, she was taking
Ah,
duty in 20 days. After
okay.
7 days quarantine, then come back.
Okay. Then you do all the homework you do, okay?
Yes, Father.
Good. So we are moving back to, down to the second part of our discussion in this particular subject. If you have noticed, the subject is called phenomenology and hermeneutics. So although there are many other philosophers in phenomenology, we have limited ourselves to some key philosophers, and these are very important key philosophers like Husserl, like Martin Heidegger, Levinas, and Paul Ricoeur. I do know that there are several others. Since it's an introduction, we can't pay attention to everyone. The second part is called hermeneutics. Once again, we are only trying to give you a very short sketch of hermeneutics is, because we cannot be finishing our philosophical course without knowing what hermeneutics is. So some basic ideas about hermeneutics and how hermeneutics is connected to phenomenology. That also is very important. Otherwise, why we have to link the two? Why we have to put them together? So I have put the two things together because there is a reason behind it. So we'll find out what is the reason behind it. Why we have put attached phenomenology with the hermeneutics. That also is very important. So I will briefly highlight a few salient aspects of hermeneutics in general, or the basic notions regarding hermeneutics. Then we'll have to certainly speak about today. Hermeneutics is a very developed science. Once upon a time, it was considered to be a base of science. Today, it's a specialized science. So long back, it was a general science. Today, hermeneutics has become a very specialized science. So we have hermeneutics, theological hermeneutics, philosophical hermeneutics, biblical hermeneutics, sociological hermeneutics, psychological hermeneutics. So it has become a very, super specialized science. So we will not be able to enter into all sorts of hermeneutics. We will see in our introduction uh, a little about general hermeneutics. Then we will see a little historical sketch. Then certainly a very brief outline of the philosophical hermeneutics, because we are students of philosophy. When you go for theological studies, certainly you will have to certainly know a little about theological hermeneutics, and much of the hermeneutics is studied in the biblical studies. Biblical studies is certainly hermeneutics. Biblical hermeneutics is one of the major and a massive subject which anybody who goes to study Bible need to understand. So, what is this subject called hermeneutics? You must see the spelling here in the notes I have sent. It is Hermeneutics. There are some spelling specialists here, beginning with Robin, so who are able to invent their own spellings. Now, here you don't invent. Here you do not invent your own spellings. Write the spellings which are officially accepted. If you want to invent your own spellings, you write it in your hometown. Okay. So, hermeneutics. So what is the meaning of the word hermeneutics, and what is a little historical, historical background? So this word hermeneutics is derived from the Greek word hermenoi. Don't worry about the spelling. I will not pronounce all the spellings because it is found in your notes that I have sent you. It is just following the notes. Hermeneutics is derived from the Greek word hermenoi, meaning to say to interpret. Interpret. To interpret. It has a linguistic relationship with Hermes. Hermes is Hermes. Hermes was supposed to be one of the Greek gods or God messenger or messenger of God, messenger of Greek gods, who was a master who knew the language of gods very well. He was a super specialist in the language of gods. So, this language of gods had to be explained, interpreted to human beings. Human beings would not understand the language of gods. So this man's job was, or this messenger's job was, to interpret the language of gods. To interpret the language of gods. That's why the word has come, hermeneutics, from this name. So Hermes was the Greek, messenger god who was expert in the language of gods and who was explaining, interpreting what the gods were talking about to human beings. So human beings normally do not understand the language of God. Actually, even today, we do not understand, for example, what exactly the language of the Bible is. So where do you go if you want to get someone who has made a study, someone who knows the language? So sometimes we don't understand things and therefore there are specialized people who know this language and who are able to interpret it. So that's why the name has come. So that's an historical or, an origin of the word hermeneutics. Now, from there, the science has developed. By hermeneutics is man by his very nature is a hermeneut. Although initially this science was not a developed science, by nature all of us are hermeneuts, meaning to say all of us interpret. We do it in our own way. Every person is trying to interpret. Now the coronavirus, everybody is able to say something about it. Everybody says something about it. Day-to-day life, we just, whenever I say something, what do? I interpret it. How do I understand this? And if I have understood this, I am trying to tell you this is what it is. When I say this is what it is, I am trying to interpret things from the way I have understood. From the way we have understood. Interpret. So man, every human person is a hermeneut, meaning to say he does the work of interpretation. Why interpretation is required? Interpretation is required because everything can be seen from different perspectives. Everything can be seen from different. In other words, there are different layers of meaning to a text. Interpretation basically is interpretation of a text. of a book, of a text, of a book. So there are layers of meaning, multiple meanings are possible. So which meaning is correct? Which meaning is not so correct? So that gives us rise to the problem. Which meaning is correct? Which meaning is not correct? Which is supposed to be the interpretation? So a text can give rise to various interpretations. So that's why hermeneutics today is a very developed science.
From that time.
So what is the basic understanding method? Interpret this on definition of hermeneutics. Basic. What could be the basic understanding or description? What could be the basic description, basic understanding, or basic definition of hermeneutics? It's given in your notes, which I have sent. Hermeneutics can be understood as a theory, methodology, and praxis of interpretation. Three aspects hermeneutics can be. As a theory, it's a theory of interpretation. It's a methodology. There is a method of how to interpret, theory, methodology, and praxis of interpretation, the practical aspect of interpretation. How to interpret in a practical sense. That is geared towards recapturing of a meaning of a text or text analog that is temporally or culturally distant or obscured by ideology and false consciousness. This definition is found in your notes. I will explain the meaning of the definition. I will read the definition once again. Then I will explain. Hermeneutics can be understood as a theory, methodology, and praxis of interpretation that is geared towards the recapturing of the meaning of a text or a text analog that is temporally or culturally distant or obscured by ideology and false consciousness. Now, this definition is found in the notes that I sent you. So don't worry about that. You can just go down to the notes. In the very first page of the title Hermeneutics, you will find this definition. So I just explained to you. Hermeneutics is understood as a theory. It's a theory. It's a methodology. And it's a praxis of interpretation. The way we interpret, practical. For what? Geared towards recapturing the meaning of a text or a text analog. So suppose you are reading a book. You are reading a book written by Kant. So what is the meaning of that text that is written? What is the meaning of what Kant has written? That's a text. Or you are reading Bible. You are reading. And what is the meaning of this? Today it's a Good Samaritan parable. What is the meaning of that? So you are trying to interpret the text or a text analog. Text analog means it need not be only written text. Text can be oral. Suppose I am speaking. It's a text but not written. Somebody is preaching a homily. It's a text but not written. It's like almost like a text. Or somebody is singing. Singing also can be interpreted. Or you are watching a movie. That also can be interpreted. Or you are watching a match. That also can be interpreted. You are listening to music. That also can be interpreted. So text analog means it need not be only in the form of a text. It can also be a speech. It can be a cultural aspect. It can be a social event. It can be a spiritual event. So a retreat is going on and you are attending that retreat. So it's a text but not written. So text analog means that. That is temporally and culturally distant. So, for example, temporally distant. Kant has written in the 16th, 17th century. 17th, 18th century Kant wrote. You never existed in the 17th century. So, it is temporally distant from us. Aristotle wrote almost 2000 years ago. So we do not know 2000 years ago, we were not there. So there is a distance between what Aristotle wrote 2000 years ago and my existence in the 21st century. So we are distant in time. So I am reading the text of Aristotle who wrote long, long back. So temporal distance, cultural distance. So we are not only temporally, culturally. Aristotle wrote in the time of Greeks. So he wrote in a Greek culture, Greek language, Greek environment. And I am living now today in the 21st century in Mangalore, in India, for example, or in Kerala. So culturally we are different. I am reading the Bible which was written almost 2000 years ago and totally different from the culture in which I am living. It was written somewhere in different place and today I am reading it in India with Indian culture, with my background. So see, the distance is enormous. Time there is distance and cultural distance. We may be cut at any time and coming back. So don't run. Anytime it can, but the same, you keep the same, what is that link? It will be the same link. So anytime it may collapse because I think very few seconds are left. So we are, time basis, we are distant from one another, time basis, and culturally we are distant from one another. And over the years, this text has been covered with various ideologies. Over the years, this text has been interpreted by so many people. So many people have interpreted. Over the years, so many people have read this text. So many people have written commentaries about it. So many people have given conclusions about it. So you see, when I read the text,